let's shift it to the industrial side, which is obviously, like you say, the biggest portion of silver demand now. So if we start with solar, I was just thinking it would be great if you could summarize the historical and projected demand figures of the last few years, just to provide some context. And then as a follow-up to that, maybe talk more about China and how seriously do you take this narrative that China is going to have this economic downturn and somehow this is going to cause silver's solar demand to miraculously disappear. And that's an idea that I don't agree with, for the record, but I'd just be interested to hear you push back on that.
Sure. So, if you look at, say, 10 years ago, about 60 million ounces went to solar. If you look at just 4 years ago, 90 million ounces of silver annually went to solar. Last year, it was 193 million ounces. This year, it's forecast at 230 million ounces. So it's essentially, in the last, say, 3 or 4 years, it's up 2.5 times the amount of silver that's gone to solar. So it's absolutely exploded. There was a forecast that the growth of solar would be somewhere around, I think it was around 20% or so year over year from 2022 to 2023. It turns out that it was 64% growth of the amount of silver that went to solar. And so the Silver Institute is forecasting that we're going to see a 20% growth again this year. And so, what some people are saying is that, you've seen this thing called thrifting, where naturally the producers, the manufacturers of solar panels will look for ways to cut costs, and they'll use, in one instance at least, they'll look to use less silver. It's a considerable portion of the cost to manufacture a panel. And what we've seen is that the amount of silver in each panel is actually plateaued. It's been dropping for 10 years and it's sort of flatlining now. I think we're on the verge of seeing that start to spike up. And the reason for it is, we've talked about this before, but we're shifting really from what we call the standard or the incumbent technologies, which is PERC, exactly. And we're shifting to TOPCon and HJT. Now, TOPCon takes up to 50% more silver per solar panel. HJT takes up to 150% more silver per panel.
Real quick break here, guys. If you are a mining investor, you are without question familiar with the Golden Triangle region in British Columbia. This is one of the most prolific mining regions in the world due to its vast deposits of gold, silver, and copper. Now, for the last 4 years, DOLLF Silver has been busy expanding their high-grade silver deposit in the Triangle, and they are backed by some of the smartest investors in the silver business, including the legendary Eric Sprott, Hecla Mining, US Global Investors, Fidelity, Delbrook Capital, Sprott Resource Corp, and more. If you are curious why the smartest money in the silver business is cozying up to DOLLF Silver, then hit the link beneath this video.
So we are not only growing the amount of solar panels that we're producing, but we're also shifting to technologies that require more silver per panel. So It's almost like you've got this exponential growth in silver demand going to solar. And so even if you had solar production flatline for whatever reason, economic downturn, a move away temporarily from this green transition, whatever it might be, you still have this shift towards higher efficiency in solar panels. And so that, I believe, if nothing else, will help to maintain a growth in the demand of silver for solar panels, even if the rate, slows somewhat. So, silver that goes into solar panels for now is not recuperable. It may be one day, but for all intents and purposes, it's not recuperable. So you don't see that silver ever again. It just ends up ultimately maybe 20, 25 years from now in some waste dump or something. So that's silver that you just don't have access to anymore. And that takes away from silver for other purposes, including investment. And so it's just very bullish for not only the industrial side, but the investment side as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And especially if, China, even if it does have an economic downturn, this idea that other countries won't be there to pick up the baton is a fallacy. And, like Latin America, as we've spoken about before, 65% of capacity in the pre-construction phase. I think Reuters was expecting a 5-fold increase in Latin America's solar capacity in the next few years. So, and then of course there's India as well, as we've spoken about before. This Adani Green Energy, world's largest renewable energy plant in India, has just been unveiled, 5 times the size of Paris, 500 square kilometers of just solar. And I think there are other energy sources as well, but it's mostly solar.
Right.
And of course, India are importing, 70 million ounces of silver in February alone. So